attending. We had huge interest in this session, which is great. We're going to talk to you today. We're just going to give you a basic introduction about going on exchange. But before we do that, we might just introduce ourselves. So Manon, if you want to go first and introduce yourself. Perfect.
Thank you. So my name is Manon and I work with Lisa in UCD Global. So I am the International Mobility Officer and I look after exchanges within Europe.
Yeah, and I am Lisa Kehoe and I look after all of the exchange places outside of Europe. So that's the Americas, so North America, Canada, South America, then the Oceania, which is Australia and New Zealand, and then Asia as well. So I look after all of those exchange places. But for the moment, you'll be working with both myself and Manon until you decide or apply to where you're going to go. We are having one or two issues with screen, so bear with us. This is our first time doing a webinar like this. So yeah, just bear with us. And most importantly, we will be sharing this afterwards. So any questions that you do have, that you can ask them during this, or you can come back to us after. So that's myself and Manon there. I'm on the left and Manon's on the right. And I'm going to talk to you just a little bit about exchange. So what is exchange? So basically what exchange is, it's an agreement between two universities to exchange students on a non-fee basis. So what that means is UCD has a number of partners across the globe, and we basically send one of our UCD students to one of those universities and they send us one of their students. And what the most important part about that is that it's on a non-fee basis. So what that means is you just continue to pay your UCD tuition. You do not pay the university that you're going to. You do not pay their tuition. And that can be really, really beneficial in some cases. Like UCD partners with some of the best universities in the world, and their tuition fees can be super expensive, like $20,000 US. So you are essentially getting to go to that university for your typical UCD tuition, which is in or around, I think, the 3,000 euro mark. So it's that amount that you pay every year to UCD. So our next slide is we have some peer exchange advisors. And I'm hearing.
Hey, yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, that is brilliant. Thanks, Emil.
No problem.
Rob, can you tell us where you went on exchange and what you're studying here at UCD?
Yeah, so I'm currently in the first stage of the integrated masters for the engineering with business program. So I was studying mechanical engineering up until last year.
Okay.
And I got the opportunity to go for second semester to Singapore to Nanyang Technological University.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, that's great. I think we'll ask you a few questions in a minute, Robert, but until then, I think we have Heather here as well. Heather, are you able to unmute and just tell us a little bit what you're studying here at UCD and where you went on exchange?
Yeah, sure. I'm studying zoology at UCD in the School of Science, and I went on exchange to the University of British Columbia in Canada.
Brilliant, that's great. Thanks, Emil. Next up, we have Emma O'Hare. And Emma, you should be able to unmute yourself now, I think.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yeah, that's perfect. Thanks, Emil.
Okay.
So what are you studying here at UCD and where did you go on exchange?
Yeah, so I'm studying English and social computing, and I got to go to the Sorbonne University in Paris.
Oh, amazing. Okay, brilliant. That's great. And then Robin, are you able to talk?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Oh, brilliant. That's great, Robin. Can you tell us just what you're studying here at UCD and where you went on exchange?
Yeah, so I'm studying psychology and I went to the University of Connecticut.
Brilliant. Okay, excellent. So what we might do with you guys is just ask you one or two questions just about exchange, and you can just jump in if you want to answer. Feel free, or I might suggest someone. So first thing I would ask is, Yeah, good one. What was the highlight of your exchange? Robin, do you want to go with that one just because you were last to talk?
Yeah, sure. It's kind of hard to pick a highlight because there was so many. Like, I had so much like freedom to travel, so I got to see a lot of the different parts of America, and then also just in general, like university life over there is kind of like how it is in the movies. So like all the like like the football games, basketball, tailgates, like the social scene is just like really, really fun and really inclusive. So I guess the social scene was probably my highlight.
Oh, that's brilliant. Yeah. And UConn, which university were you at again? Was it UConn?
Yeah, UConn.
Yeah.
So it's really like, it's such a community, and like they really do just like welcome you in. Like they really want to know you, and it's just like they just love internationals, and like especially being Irish, they're like, oh, you're so cool. So it was like just really, really great.
That's definitely something I notice, especially with our American partners, the American universities, that they just have this huge like campus culture, and it's, as you say, it's a real community. Rob, we might ask you the next question. What would you say if you had like any tips or advice for exchange students? What would you say?
Well, number one, I definitely recommend everyone applies, because like you'll never hear anyone give a bad review about their exchange experience. One thing I'd say is probably when I was making my application, I was quite eager to go to America as well, and I hadn't really considered any European or like Asian options. So I definitely and I ended up going to Singapore, and I absolutely loved it. So I definitely recommend don't just focus on one area. Don't be afraid to apply to places you've never thought of going or you've never been before, because regardless where you go, you're going to make friends, you're going to have a great time. So just keep an open mind.
That's really, really good advice. And if I was to give advice, that'll be it as well. Like there's so many really cool partners out there. Like a lot of our students go to France, Spain, America. We send a lot of students there, but some of our Asian partners are just phenomenal, top universities in the world. And maybe not so much Singapore, but some of our Asian partners, it can be so cheap. I know in Singapore you can make it cheap if you want.
Yeah, it actually was very cheap living in Singapore.
There you go. Yeah. So like even at that, like I know you can get food for like $1 or something over in Singapore. It's crazy. So yeah, I would say that's a really, really good tip. And something I'd say is think outside the box a little bit. And we actually do have a session on thinking outside the box. So yeah, you should all attend that. Thanks, Rob. So Emma, are you able to still there or?
Yeah, still here. Yeah.
Okay, great. Preparing for exchange, what was that like for you?
So I think it was just a lot of paperwork. So it can seem very intimidating at the start.
And especially because you went to Sorbonne, right?
Yeah, it was a bit of a nightmare, to be honest, the paperwork. They don't really do anything online, so you have to do everything either in person or through lots and lots of forms. So it is a bit overwhelming at the start, but if you just take it handy, it is doable. A lot of people got through it, so. And
definitely worth it, I would say, from Erasmus.
Oh, 100%, yeah.
Because all that paperwork, but you end up getting that little bit of money as well, which is really, really helpful, I'm sure, for everyone.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks a million for that, Emma. Heather, would you be able to talk about maybe the biggest challenge you faced?
Yeah, I think in Canada, when I was in Canada, I'd say the biggest challenge was the time difference. I didn't find I got particularly homesick personally, but I know some of my friends did. And I think the time difference makes that really difficult, because if, say, you're in the evening and you're feeling a bit down, it is hard to call your family because they're all asleep.
I
definitely say the time difference is the biggest challenge, but it's totally worth it. And even the friends who did get quite homesick, they found a group of friends and kind of everyone was in the same boat, so it all worked out.
Yeah, and you know what? Like even though that time difference, that's a really, really good point, because when I lived in a country that there was a massive time difference, I struggled with that. The fact that I couldn't just pick up the phone and somebody be awake at home. But you know what? It probably was to my benefit because it controlled me a little bit from being on the phone all the time as well. So
Yeah,
it makes it
definitely.
probably
And you go
even
seek out
more.
a friend instead, kind of thing. It works out well.
Yeah, all of a sudden I was just living my life through the phone or whatever it was, and in a different time zone. But yeah, so definitely a challenge, I would say. Yeah, but it's good to know 100%. What do you think the biggest difference between studying at your UCD studying at UCD and studying at the partner university? And I kind of mean this in the academic sense, so in the
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things for me anyway, and this might be course specific, but like the way they do university over there, like at UConn anyway, there was a lot more continuous assessment. So that was one thing I had to get used to, which was fine, like totally manageable. And it was kind of handy then because the exams weren't that big a stress then at the end. It was like they were worth a lot less. But the second thing was that like they're a lot more, they want to hear your personal thoughts on it. Like a lot of my assignments were weekly reflections, or like I didn't write an essay the entire year that I was there, and that's all I was used to.
Yeah.
And so I had been like trained from day one. It was like social sciences, we don't want you to use the word I in your essays. Like we want to know what the experts say. And then over there it was like, no, tell us what you think. Like really like dig deep and like reflect on what we're talking about and like engage with the material. So that was like different. And like I didn't really have to reference a lot, and it was just different, but at the same time it was enjoyable too. Like I kind of liked not having to write essays.
Yeah, no, I imagine it kept you on track, and then you weren't like massively stressed. And you know what, I know you were saying that that's subject specific, but that I would actually say that that's the feedback. What you've just said there is actually the feedback that we get from a lot of our students that go on exchange, especially outside of Europe, that it's a lot more continuous assessment, and that's actually really interesting what you said about writing in the like to give your opinion rather than the experts. I hadn't come across that before, so that's really interesting. But I think the continuous assessment thing is great because it means that you can plan out all your assignments and you don't have this big assessment at the end that, you know, your whole thing is
yeah, it's not as stressful, to be honest.
100%. Okay, I want to ask just two more questions. Rob, what would you say is the most fun thing you did while you were on exchange?
That's kind of hard to pick. I guess, well, Singapore itself is a really great city. It's really modern, really clean. Like one thing I really liked about it was the nightlife. It's especially for students, it's a really sort of different experience to what you'd have here. Like there's all these like rooftop bars on skyscrapers, which are really cool. But another thing was that Singapore is like this sort of the center of Southeast Asia in terms of travel. So you could just be having dinner with your friends on a Thursday night and decide you wanted to book a flight to Vietnam the next morning, and it would only cost like €40 return flights, and it was super cheap to travel.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was really so I guess the travel aspect was really really cool. That was probably the most fun part.
Yeah, and then so many different cultures as well in Asia. Like you're €40 and you could be in Vietnam, but another €40 you could be in Thailand or China or wherever it is. So
exactly.
Just amazing. Emma, we might ask you. Oh, I think this is probably an easy one, but anyway, would you do it again?
Oh, definitely, yeah, 100%. Like there were definitely stressful moments and times where I didn't know what I was doing. But I think the friends you make along the way and all the people on your course that are also Erasmus students, it just really, you become like a little community, and you can complain together, or you can have fun together. Like it's amazing.
Yeah, no, that is great. And I think that's a reflection, not just on when you go on an exchange, but when you I've lived abroad a few times, and you know, you find your little expat community. Mm-hmm. And you just end up having, like, because it's all new, everybody's new together and everybody's going through the same sort of culture shocks and things that yeah, things that annoy them and things that are brilliant, and so developing that little community. And I think when you are abroad, it's really easy. There's so many things set up for you to develop that friend network, because straight away you all have one thing in common: you're all new to this country. So it's really, really easy to make those connections. This wasn't as easy as I thought it was, getting all of you to be able to talk, but thank you so much for coming along. I know I did have some other people that were going to talk, but for some reason you wouldn't come up on my screen, so I could unmute you. So I'm really sorry if I didn't get to talk to all our peer advisors. I hope that you'll come along to some more of our events and you'll be able to answer some questions for the students that are planning to go on exchange next year. But for now, thanks a million.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okie dokie. So we'll move on to our next slide, and it's why go on exchange. And I think at this stage, Manon, will I hand over to you and I can stop talking for a second?
That sounds good.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we thought we'd just give you a few reasons why you should go on exchange, but I think our peer advisors already did a pretty good job at that. So just very briefly, you could want to go on exchange for academic reasons, because as Lisa said, you could study at some of the best universities in the world, especially in Asia. You have top universities there on choice, and also within Europe. You could want to learn or master a new language. As a language student myself, I graduated with a modern languages degree. So if you're studying languages, that's going to be like so helpful for you to really help you improving your language. You could want to try new or different or more specialized courses. And as our peer advisor said, you could just want to experience a different education system. And overall, it's a great academic experience. And also for your career, it gives you an international experience. It gives you possibly the possibility of having work experience or internships, and it's a great addition to your CV. And you could also have some personal reasons why you would want to go on exchange. It gives you an insight into different cultures. It gives you independence, resilience, a multicultural experience. It's kind of a bit of adventure. It helps you broaden your horizons. It's a different weather. So if you go to, let's say, the south of Spain, it's kind of sunny, different from the Irish climate, I'd say. And you could just want to challenge yourself. It gives you travel opportunities, as Rob said, and as Emma said as well. You could get new friends along the way, and just it's really fun.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thanks, Manon. One of the things for me is when I'd say with my first exchange-like experience, probably the biggest thing for me was I was not independent at all. And then once I came back from that, I would do anything, go anywhere on my own, became so independent, I would say, after exchange. That was probably the biggest thing personally for me.
Yeah, I was definitely the same, because I think when I went on exchange myself, it was the first time I was living in France, and I went to the UK, and just, you know, the overall language thing and just getting out there, it just really makes you change who you are and see new things, you know.
Yeah,
and it gives you also a different perspective on your own country, so it's quite interesting.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's really true, actually. Yeah, you come back and look at things in a completely different way. Yeah. Manon, I can't remember. Are you going to do the next one about when you can go on? Yeah, brilliant.
So this slide just gives you a brief idea of when you can go on exchange. So every program is different and has different opportunities for going on exchange. So this overview gives you an indication of when you can go and whether you can go for a semester or for a full academic year. If you're not sure, or if you have more questions, I would really encourage you to check with your school, because they'll be able to let you know when exactly you can go. And yeah, Lisa.
Okay, and then the next one, we're going to talk about where you can go on exchange. If I can just click. There we go.
I guess many of you will be wondering where you can go, and the good news is that you can go pretty much everywhere. So we have on average 500 to 600 UCD students going abroad each year, and that's about 275 universities worldwide. We have over 200 university partners within Europe and almost 60 partners outside of Europe, the majority of them being in the US, but also Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and of course, South America, Asia, so in Japan, South Korea, or Singapore.
Brilliant. Okay. And then I think I'm going to, this is over to me, right? Yeah, so consideration. So this is probably what we talk about in this slide is just to like help you kind of decide which universities you want to select. So when you're applying to go on exchange, you get to select a number of universities, and these are just some of our thoughts on what might help you with that selection process. So the most important thing I would say is the courses or the modules that are on offer at our partner universities. So what range of courses do they offer? Are they relevant for your degree? Perhaps a university that offers courses in a specific field that you're interested in. So maybe there's the university out there that offers a module that you are really interested in, and actually UCD doesn't have that. So that's something to think about. It's an opportunity to build on what you've already done at UCD or try new things. So definitely the courses are really important with regards to that. And then of course, something that I would be a key thing for me anyway, because I'm terrible at languages, is what language are the majority of the courses offered in? Are they in English? And if not, will you be fluent enough to follow lectures and assignments and all of that in that language? So that's definitely not important for our language students as well, because obviously they want to be going to a country where that language is spoken. The next thing to think about is the academic calendar. So the most important thing here is to realize that not all of our partners start and end on the same day as UCD. And one of the ones that springs to mind, and Manon, you might jump in with a European one if there is one. But for me, I think like Japan, their academic calendar is very different. They have a much longer winter break, much shorter summer break. And then the same in Australia. So you'd have if you went for the full academic year, you'd have a big break in the winter time, but you might end up flying over there in July rather than when UCD starts in end of August, start of September. Manon, are there any ones in Europe that come to mind about might be a later start date or an earlier finish?
So we're pretty much aligned in Europe with the UCD calendar. The only thing is you may, if you're going, let's say, to Germany or to the Nordic countries, you may start in August, whereas if you're going to Spain or Italy, you may start in October or even November.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, good to know. But the great thing about this is that all of this information can be found on our partners' websites. They're just as good as UCD's website, and they follow, like, they really, from my experience and looking at all these websites, they really follow a similar pattern where to find academic calendars, course catalogs. So most of them will have a course catalog similar to UCD's course catalog. So it is just about doing a little bit of research. So the next slide we have here is about location, language, and accommodation. So with location, I suppose it's about, do you want to be closer to home or do you want to be further away? Like a big one, Rob touched on this about the options to travel and explore a region. Like if you're in Asia, for example, getting to all of those countries, and for the price of €40 flight is unbelievable. Otherwise you might decide that you want to be in America and do travel around loads of America, or even might be your opportunity to get over to Australia and New Zealand. So yeah, that is a big, I think for me that'd be an important deciding factor. And also the fact that, you know, you might be really interested in exploring another culture. So I went to Japan for a year and just, you know, got to learn so much about the Japanese culture. And following on from that, I decided I wanted to experience another culture. So ended up living in Dubai and got to know a lot more about the Arabic culture. So yeah, I think that can be really, really interesting, putting yourself into a new culture. And then you might also consider, especially if we have anybody on that's really into sports or an activity, you might want to think about, do they have like a great running team or whatever it is that you're into, or maybe you're a massive American football fan, so this is your chance to live in America and really get to experience that. And of course, there is the side of, are you a city person or do you prefer being out in nature? I would say I probably used to be a city person, but now I love being out and about. So I always think that Colorado Boulder is just like an amazing choice of a university, just for being so close to the mountains and and nature and outdoorsy. So it's worth considering that as well. And some of our partners, this is the last point on location, will have work or internship experiencers. You might be able to stay on after your exchange and find an internship or a work experience. So that's definitely something to consider as well when you're choosing your location. Obviously that's dependent on visas if you're going outside of Europe. Language. So if I miss anything here, Manon, you can jump in, but exchange is like a really fantastic opportunity to learn a new language or become fluent in the language that you're learning here at UCD. So you can think outside the box there. You can maybe, if you're studying Spanish, you might think South America. Last year we had students in PUC Chile and in Mexico. And then you might just pick a destination that English is not the first language, but actually the university teaches entirely through English. And one of the examples of that is we partner with the University of Nottingham Ningbo, and Ningbo is in China, but it's basically the University of Nottingham in China. And that is just a phenomenal experience. You have a University of Nottingham education, but you're surrounded by Chinese culture. It's really cheap in Asia again, so you've got loads of travel opportunities. So yeah, just to, I suppose, think outside the box. And I don't know, have I missed anything there, Manon? Would you add in anything just about language and from a I suppose a language student perspective?
No, just really that it's the best opportunity really you can get to really improve your language skills. Or if you're just, even if you're not a language student, if you're just interested, if you're doing an elective in a language, that's a really great chance just to get that on your CV.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, thanks a mil. And then the last thing on this slide is talking about accommodation. So, this for some people, they'd be really keen to know about accommodation. And keen to not know about it, but keen to be all set up and not worried about accommodation at all. And where others might be a little bit more adventurous and be happy to land in a country and figure out accommodation themselves. So this is something to think about when you're looking at the partner universities' websites. Like, do they help exchange students find accommodation? Is it easy to find accommodation? Or is it a case you land in a city and you have to go look for the accommodation yourself? So that's something to think about. And one of the things I've noticed there is that our American partners often do offer accommodation, but then the downside is that it can be quite expensive. So you get there and it's reliable and all set up for you, and you've nothing to worry about at all. But then, it can be more expensive than if you go someplace else. But that's just one example. So many of our partners across Europe and across the rest of the world offer accommodation to exchange students. Some of them are really cheap, some of them are expensive, some of them have aircon, some of them don't. So, you definitely, as an exchange student, have to have a certain amount of adaptability when you land in the country. Our next slide is about future plans and finances. So this is the last 2 points that we'll talk about when we're talking about what you should consider. So with future plans, I mean, this is an opportunity. Like, if you are interested in a country or you've got ties to a country in some way, this is an opportunity for you to go and explore that further. So yeah, definitely I would take that into consideration. For me, I have a bit of a rule that I don't like going back to the same place twice, but that's not for everyone. So definitely it might be for some people to take that into consideration. And then the next thing is finances. So definitely worth taking your finances into consideration. It might be more expensive. Really think about what realistically can you afford and what can you not afford. And it's when you're selecting the universities that you want to apply for, now is the time, or that is the time to think about this, because you don't want to get so far down the road and be offered a place and then all of a sudden you realize, God, I actually can't afford to go to this place. And that not only affects you, but it affects another student that maybe could have taken up that place. So we do really want you to think about your finances, and that you can afford to go to the destinations. We would say that there's really great ways of doing that. So for example, a lot of countries will have a cost of living, so you can look at the price of like food, transportation, going out and travel. There's loads of websites do that. And we might actually put a link into this for some of those websites, or they may be already on our website. But also, definitely we're not just assuming something's going to be expensive. So, you know, just like we heard there, I made an assumption that Singapore might be expensive, but actually what Rob said was he found it really, really cheap. So definitely not worth assuming any place is going to be too expensive. Definitely look into it. I just have some notes here that I want to make sure I take everything off when it comes to the finances. It could be, so yeah,